My granddaughter Emma dropped her voice to a whisper and shattered my world. "Grandma, I heard Mommy and Daddy say they're putting you in a home today and taking your money." I smiled and patted her 8-year-old head while rage built in my chest like a wildfire. Brian and Jessica had no idea what they'd just awakened. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up babysitting for two of the most ungrateful people on God's green earth. 18 months ago, my husband Frank passed away suddenly from a heart attack. Brian and Jessica swooped in like vultures, all concern and fake tears. "Mom, you can't live alone anymore," Brian insisted. "Come stay with us. We'll take care of you." What they really meant was, "Come be our live-in nanny and ATM." But Emma's innocent revelation changed everything. While she colored at the kitchen table, I quietly called my lawyer, David Morrison. We'd gone to high school together, and he'd handled Frank's will. "David, it's Margaret Sullivan. I need an emergency appointment today. Can you meet me at 2? Everything okay, Maggie? Let's just say some chickens are about to come home to roost." Next, I called my bank. "This is Margaret Sullivan. Account number 47789. I need to speak with someone about transferring funds immediately." The representative confirmed what I already knew. Thanks to Frank's insurance policy and our savings, I had more money than Brian and Jessica realized. Much more. I hung up and looked at Emma, still innocently coloring. Poor little thing had no idea she just saved her grandmother from being robbed blind. I ruffled her hair. "Emma, sweetie, how would you like to help Grandma with a very special project?" She looked up with those bright blue eyes. "What kind of project?" "The kind that teaches people not to count their chickens before they hatch." At exactly 1:30, I told Emma we were going for a walk. I grabbed my purse, the one with all my important documents that I'd started carrying everywhere after Frank died. Call it widow's intuition, but I'd sensed this day might come. We walked to the corner coffee shop where David was waiting. He looked concerned as I explained the situation. "They think I'm some helpless old woman they can just dispose of," I told him. "They're about to learn otherwise." David nodded grimly. "What do you want to do?" "Everything. New will, power of attorney revocation, account transfers, the works. And David, I want it all done before they get back from their errands." As we headed to his office, Emma skipped beside me, humming. She had no idea she was about to witness the most spectacular takedown in Sullivan family history. Sitting in David's office while Emma played with toys in the waiting room, I reflected on how blind I'd been. The signs were there from the beginning, but grief makes you stupid. After Frank's funeral, when Brian suggested I sell my house and move in with them, I thought it was love. "The market's hot right now, Mom. You could get top dollar, and we'd love having you close." What he didn't say was that my Social Security check would help with their mortgage, and free babysitting would save them $800 a month. I sold my beautiful 3-bedroom home, the one Frank and I had shared for 32 years, and handed over the proceeds to help them pay off debts. $600,000. Gone. "I should have seen it then," I told David as he prepared the paperwork. The way Jessica's eyes lit up when she heard the sale price. The sudden friendliness after years of barely tolerating me. The past 18 months had been a masterclass in manipulation. Every time I mentioned getting my own apartment, Brian would guilt me. "Mom, Emma needs you. You're so good with her. Besides, at your age, wouldn't you rather be with family?" At my age. I was 67, not 97. I could drive, cook, think, and apparently plan revenge better than they could plan their pathetic scheme. Jessica had been more subtle, but equally calculating. "Oh, Margaret, your experience with children is invaluable. Emma's doing so well in school. It's definitely because you help with homework." Translation: keep doing unpaid labor while we go out 3 nights a week. The worst part was how they'd isolated me from friends. "You're so busy with Emma, we didn't think you'd want to join book club anymore. The church ladies called, but we told them you weren't feeling up to visitors." Slowly, systematically, they'd cut me off from my support system, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They underestimated me. David slid papers across his desk. "This revokes their power of attorney and makes me your designated agent. This transfers your accounts to a new bank they don't know about. And this," he smiled, "is your new will." I signed with a flourish. "What about the house money I gave them?" "That gets interesting. Since there's no formal loan agreement, we can argue it was a gift contingent on you living there permanently. If they breach that contract, they have to pay it back. Every penny, plus interest. I glanced at my watch. 2:45. They'd be home by 4, expecting to find their compliant old mother ready to be shipped off to Shady Oaks nursing home. Instead, they'd find a woman who'd just reclaimed her power. Emma burst through the office door. "Grandma, are we done with the boring grown-up stuff?" "Almost. Sweetheart, just one more stop." Our final stop was First National Bank, where I'd done business for 40 years. Emma sat in the children's area with a lollipop while I met with Janet, the branch manager. "Mrs. Sullivan, I have to say, this is highly irregular. You want to transfer everything today?" "Everything. Checking, savings, CDs, all of it. To the new account at Commerce Bank across town." Janet's fingers flew across her keyboard. That's quite a substantial amount. Are you sure about this?" I thought about Brian's face this morning, how he'd avoided eye contact when he said they were running errands, how Jessica had hugged me extra tight, like she was saying goodbye, how they'd asked me to stay with Emma instead of coming along, breaking their usual pattern. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The transfer took an hour. $637,412. Frank's life insurance, our retirement savings, the house proceeds, and every penny I'd saved over 4 decades of careful living. Money they'd assumed would be theirs once they had me declared incompetent and gained control. "Mrs. Sullivan," Janet said carefully, "if you don't mind me asking, why the sudden urgency?" I smiled sweetly. "Let's just say some people are about to learn that you don't count your chickens before they hatch." By 3:30, Emma and I were back home. I sent her to her room to play and got busy in the kitchen, making their favorite dinner, pot roast with mashed potatoes. If this was going to be my last meal in this house, I wanted it to be memorable. As I peeled potatoes, I thought about the conversation they'd probably had this morning. "The appointment at Shady Oaks is at 5, Brian would have said. "We'll tell her after dinner. By tomorrow, she'll be settled in her new home, and we can get the power of attorney paperwork started." They'd probably already planned how to spend my money. Jessica had been eyeing a new SUV for months. Brian had mentioned wanting to renovate the kitchen. They'd even discussed a vacation to Europe, something they could finally afford. At 3:45, I heard their car in the driveway. I smoothed my apron and checked my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked like a harmless old grandmother preparing dinner for her loving family. Perfect. The front door opened, and I heard their voices, unusually cheerful and loud. They were overcompensating, probably feeling guilty about what they planned to do. "Mom, we're home," Brian called. "Something smells amazing." "Just making your favorite," I called back. "Emma's in her room. How were your errands?" There was a pause. "Fine," Jessica answered. "Just, running around town." I smiled to myself. In about an hour, they were going to discover that while they were running around town plotting my downfall, I was running circles around them. Dinner was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive theater. I served their plates with extra care, asked about their day with genuine interest, and complimented Jessica's new haircut. They squirmed like children caught stealing cookies, exchanging nervous glances when they thought I wasn't looking. "This roast is incredible, Mom," Brian said, though I noticed he was barely eating. "You really outdid yourself." "Well, I wanted tonight to be special." I smiled warmly. "You never know when things might change." Jessica nearly choked on her mashed potatoes. "Change? What do you mean?" "Oh, just life in general, dear. Nothing ever stays the same forever, does it?" They managed to get through dinner, though the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Emma, bless her heart, chattered away about school, completely oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around the table. At 7 o'clock, Brian cleared his throat. "Mom, could we talk to you in the living room?" "Emma, go play in your room for a bit." Here it comes, I thought. The moment they've been building up to all day. We settled in the living room, them on the couch, me in my favorite chair by the window. Brian fidgeted with his hands. Jessica stared at the coffee table. Finally, Brian spoke. "Mom, Jessica and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to consider other living arrangements." I tilted my head. The picture of innocent confusion. "Other arrangements? You mean like getting my own apartment?" "Not exactly," Jessica jumped in, her voice artificially sweet. We were thinking more along the lines of assisted living, somewhere with people your own age, activities, medical staff on hand. You mean a nursing home? It's not a nursing home, Brian said quickly. It's a lovely community. We visited today. Shady Oaks. They have a beautiful facility, great programs. And you've already made arrangements, haven't you? Another exchange of glances. We thought we'd explore options, Brian said weakly. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. They expected tears, protests, maybe even begging. Instead, I smiled. Well, that's interesting timing. What do you mean? Jessica's voice was sharp with worry. I mean, I spent today exploring options too. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to David's contact. David, it's Margaret. Could you come over now? Yes, I think it's time. Brian's face went pale. Mom, what are you doing? Taking care of business, sweetheart, just like you taught me. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. David Morrison will be here in 10 minutes to explain some changes I've made today. You might want to sit down. Jessica grabbed Brian's arm. What is she talking about? The doorbell rang exactly 10 minutes later. I opened it to find David with his briefcase and a grim expression. Good evening, Margaret, Brian, Jessica. David, I said cheerfully, why don't you explain to my son and daughter-in-law what we accomplished today? David settled into the armchair across from Brian and Jessica, who looked like they were facing a firing squad. Emma had thankfully fallen asleep upstairs, sparing her from the atomic bomb I was about to drop. Where should I begin? David asked, opening his briefcase. The power of attorney seems like a good place, I suggested sweetly. David nodded. As of today, Brian and Jessica Sullivan no longer have any legal authority over Margaret Sullivan's affairs. The power of attorney they were planning to use has been formally revoked. Brian shot to his feet. Planning to use? We weren't planning anything. Sit down, son, I said quietly. We both know that's a lie. Jessica's face had gone white as fresh snow. Margaret, I don't understand. Why would you do this? Because 8-year-olds have better hearing than you think. I looked directly at her. Emma told me about your conversation this morning, about putting me in a home and taking my money. The silence that followed was deafening. Brian slowly sank back onto the couch, his face a mask of panic. Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. David, I continued, would you mind explaining the financial arrangements? Certainly. Mrs. Sullivan has transferred all her assets to new accounts at a different bank. This includes approximately $637,000, which represents her life savings, insurance proceeds, and the money she received from selling her home. You can't do this, Jessica finally found her voice. That money! You gave us that money! Actually, David said calmly, I've reviewed the situation, and there was no formal loan agreement. The money was provided under the understanding that Margaret would live here permanently. If that arrangement is terminated, she has the right to request repayment, I finished, with interest. Brian ran his hands through his hair. Mom, please, let's talk about this reasonably. You don't understand what you're doing. Oh, but I do. I stood up, feeling more powerful than I had in months. I understand that you've been planning to have me declared incompetent so you could control my finances. I understand that you've been isolating me from friends and treating me like unpaid help. And I understand that you've been counting money that was never yours to begin with. We were trying to protect you. Brian's voice rose. You're 67 years old. Living on your own isn't safe. I'm not living on my own. I'm living with people who see me as a burden and a bank account. There's a difference. Jessica leaned forward desperately. Margaret, we can work this out. Maybe we approached this wrong, but we do care about you. I laughed. And it wasn't a pleasant sound. You care about my Social Security check. You care about free babysitting. You care about my money. But you don't care about me. David cleared his throat. There's one more matter we need to discuss. My smile turned predatory. Ah, yes, the best part. David pulled out another folder. Margaret has also updated her will. The previous version left her entire estate to Brian, with provisions for Emma's education. The new version makes some significant changes. Brian's face had gone from pale to green. What kind of changes? I decided to deliver this blow myself. The kind where Emma gets everything, held in trust until she's 25. You and Jessica get nothing, not one penny. Jessica let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a wail. You can't do this to us. We have a mortgage, car payments, Emma's future to think about. You should have thought about that before you decided to rob me blind. I was done playing nice. Did you really think I was so stupid I wouldn't figure out your plan? Shady Oaks costs $4,000 a month. You had it all calculated, didn't you? Put me away, sell my belongings, control my money, and pocket the difference. Brian tried one more desperate approach. Mom, I'm your son, your only child. Dad would want you to take care of me. That was his first mistake, bringing Frank into this. Your father, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, worked 2 jobs for 30 years so we could save every penny for our retirement. He went without so we could build something to leave you. And you were planning to steal it while I was still alive. I walked to the mantelpiece where Frank's photo sat and picked it up, looking at his kind face. You know what your father would say if he could see you now? He'd say, I should have done this sooner. I set the photo down and turned back to face them. David, there's one more document, isn't there? David nodded grimly. The eviction notice. Margaret has decided she no longer feels safe living here. As a tenant without a lease, you have 30 days to find her alternative arrangements. Eviction notice? Brian's voice cracked. This is our house. Actually, I said, pulling out my own folder. That's where things get interesting. Remember that $600,000 I gave you? I have all the bank records showing. The transfer came from my account to yours, specifically to pay off your mortgage and credit cards. No loan documents were signed, but there are emails where you promised I'd always have a home here. Jessica's face crumpled as understanding dawned. You want the money back? Every single penny, plus the 18 months of rent you should have been paying me, the money you saved on babysitting, and compensation for emotional distress. I smiled sweetly. I figure that comes to about $700,000, all told. Brian's voice was barely a whisper. We don't have that kind of money. Then I guess you'll have to get creative. Sell the house, liquidate your retirement accounts, get second jobs, do whatever it takes. I shrugged. Or declare bankruptcy. Either way, you won't be doing it on my dime anymore. David stood up, snapping his briefcase shut. I'll leave you folks to process this information. Margaret, your new apartment is ready whenever you want to move in. As he headed for the door, Jessica called out desperately. What about Emma? You can't just abandon your granddaughter. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, my hand on the banister. I'm not abandoning Emma. I'm teaching her a valuable lesson about what happens when you try to cheat the people who love you. She'll understand someday. I climbed the stairs to pack my things, leaving Brian and Jessica to contemplate the smoking ruins of their perfect plan. Tomorrow, I'd start my new life. Tonight, I'd sleep better than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear Jessica starting to cry. 3 weeks later, I was sipping coffee in my beautiful new apartment overlooking Riverside Park, watching joggers and dog walkers enjoy the morning sunshine. The 2-bedroom furnished rental was costing me $1,800 a month, a fraction of what I'd been contributing to Brian and Jessica's household expenses. My phone rang. Brian's name flashed on the screen for the 14th time this week. I let it go to voicemail, same as the other 13 calls. When it stopped ringing, I played his latest message. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk. This has gone too far. Emma's asking where you went and Jessica's having panic attacks. We can work this out if you'll just be reasonable. Reasonable. That was rich coming from someone who'd planned to have me committed. I deleted the message and called David instead. How's our lawsuit coming along? Slowly. They've hired Martin Burke from Burke & Associates. He's actually pretty good. David's tone was careful. He's arguing that the money you gave them was a gift, not a loan, and that you can't retroactively demand repayment. And what did you tell him? That we have 18 months of documented evidence showing they treated you as a tenant, not a family member. Bank records, emails, even grocery receipts where you paid for household expenses. The pattern of financial abuse is clear. I smiled, settling back in my comfortable chair. What else? Burke filed a motion claiming you're not mentally competent to make these financial decisions. They want a psychological evaluation. That wiped the smile off my face. They're still trying to have me declared incompetent? It's a Hail Mary play. They know they're losing, so they're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. David paused. Maggie, there's something else. They've been asking questions about Frank's insurance policy. Specifically, whether you were aware of all the beneficiaries. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? All the beneficiaries? I'm not sure yet. Burke hinted that there might be some irregularities in how the insurance money was distributed. I'm looking into it. After I hung up, I sat staring out at the park, unease settling in my stomach like a cold stone. Frank had always handled our insurance and investments. I'd trusted him completely, signing whatever papers he put in front of me without reading them carefully. What if Brian knew something I didn't? That afternoon, I drove to Emma's school. I waited across the street in my car until I saw her walking toward the playground after dismissal. She looked smaller than I remembered, and sadder. I got out and called her name. Her face lit up like Christmas morning, and she ran to me, nearly knocking me over with her hug. "Grandma, I missed you so much. Why did you leave?" My heart broke a little. I had to, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and other grown-ups have to protect themselves. Are you coming home? I can't. Emma, but maybe you could visit me sometime. My new apartment has a pool. Her eyes widened. Really? Really. Ask your parents if you can come see me this weekend. I hugged her tight. I love you, baby girl. Don't ever forget that. As I drove away, I saw Jessica's car pulling into the school parking lot. She must have seen me with Emma because my phone started ringing immediately. I didn't answer. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for Friday morning at Dr. Patricia Coleman's office. I arrived early, dressed in my best navy suit with pearl earrings, the picture of a competent, well-groomed senior citizen. Dr. Coleman was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Sullivan, I want you to know this evaluation was requested by your son's attorney, but I work independently. I'm here to assess your mental state, not to take anyone's side." I appreciate that. Dr. Coleman. For 2 hours, she put me through cognitive tests, memory exercises, and questions about my recent decisions. I answered everything honestly, explaining my reasoning for each financial move I'd made. "You seem to have very clear recall of events and strong analytical skills," she noted. "Can you tell me about your relationship with your son and daughter-in-law?" I chose my words carefully. "They're struggling financially, and I think they saw me as a solution to their problems, rather than as a person with my own needs and rights. Do you feel your recent actions might be considered extreme by some people?" I looked her directly in the eye. "Dr. Coleman, if someone was planning to steal your life savings and have you committed against your will, what would you consider an appropriate response?" She made a note. Point taken. That evening, David called with an update. The evaluation went well. She's recommending no conservatorship. "But Maggie, we have a problem. I found out what Burke was hinting about." My stomach dropped. "Tell me." "Frank had a second life insurance policy, a big one, $2 million, purchased 5 years before he died. You weren't the only beneficiary." The room seemed to tilt. "Who else?" "Someone named Linda Morrison." Ring any bells? The name hit me like a physical blow. Linda Morrison, Frank's secretary from the engineering firm where he'd worked for 15 years. The pretty blonde who'd always been a little too friendly at company picnics. "She got half the money, Maggie. $1 million. The insurance company cut 2 checks. One to you for $1 million. One to her for $1 million. I sank into my chair, mind reeling. "But I only received $500,000 from his life insurance." That's what has Burke interested. If Frank left Linda $1 million and you were supposed to get $1 million, where's your other $500,000? The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. Brian had handled all of Frank's insurance paperwork after the funeral. He'd told me the policy was only worth $500,000 after taxes and fees. I'd been so grief-stricken, I'd believed him. My son stole $500,000 from me. It looks that way. And if he's been sitting on that information while trying to have you declared incompetent, it shows a pattern of financial manipulation that goes back years. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of multiple betrayals. My husband had cheated on me emotionally and financially. My son had been stealing from me before he ever tried to commit me. The 2 men I'd trusted most in the world had both betrayed me. But instead of despair, I felt something else rising in my chest. Pure, crystalline rage. "David," I said quietly, "I want to destroy him." I spent the weekend planning my next move. If Brian thought he could manipulate me with hidden information about Frank's affairs, He was about to learn that two could play that game. Monday morning, I called Linda Morrison. According to the internet, she was now Linda Morrison Hayes, living in suburban Atlanta with her orthodontist husband and two teenage daughters. The phone rang 4 times before a woman answered. "Hello? Linda, this is Margaret Sullivan, Frank's wife." The silence stretched so long I wondered if she'd hung up. Finally, "Oh my God, Margaret, I wasn't expecting. How did you get this number? I'm very resourceful when I need to be." I kept my voice pleasant, conversational. "I think we need to talk about Frank's insurance policy." "I don't know what you mean." "Linda, honey, I know about the $2 million policy. I know you received half of it. What I'm curious about is what you know about my half." Another long pause. "Your son told me you'd received your portion." "My son told you? When exactly did you speak to my son?" He called me after Frank died to let me know about the funeral arrangements and to discuss the insurance situation." I felt my pulse quicken. "What did he tell you about the insurance situation?" "He said you were struggling with grief and that he was handling your finances temporarily. He said the insurance company had made an error and sent 2 checks when there should have been 1, and that I should cash mine and not worry about it." The audacity took my breath away. Brian had not only stolen my money, he'd convinced Frank's mistress to be complicit in covering it up. "Linda, that check you received was supposed to be split between us. Frank left us each $500,000, not $1 million each. That's not what Brian said. He showed me paperwork. Forged paperwork, I'm guessing." I let that sink in. "Linda, I think we've both been played by my son. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Tuesday morning, I was waiting outside Brian's office when he arrived for work. His face went white when he saw me sitting on the lobby couch. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "Hello, Brian. Lovely morning, isn't it?" I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "I thought we could have lunch. There's so much to catch up on." He glanced around nervously, aware that his coworkers were watching. "I'm really busy today." "Oh, I insist. In fact, I already made us a reservation at Giovanni's. You remember Giovanni's, don't you? Where you took me to celebrate your promotion last year." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine, but I can't stay long." Giovanni's was busy with the lunch crowd, providing perfect cover for what I was about to do. We ordered, made small talk about Emma, and I waited until his guard was down. Then I smiled sweetly and said, "I had the most interesting conversation with Linda Morrison yesterday." Brian's fork clattered against his plate. Brian's face went through several color changes before settling on ash gray. Around us, the restaurant hummed with normal lunch conversation while my son contemplated the ruins of his carefully constructed lies. "I don't know what Linda told you," he finally managed, "but she told me you convinced her that the insurance company made an error, that she deserved the full $1 million instead of the $500,000 Frank actually left her." I took a sip of my iced tea, enjoying the moment. "Imagine my surprise when I realized you'd stolen $500,000 from me to cover up your father's affair. I was protecting you." Brian's voice rose, then dropped when other diners looked our way. "You were devastated after Dad died. Finding out about Linda would have destroyed you completely. So you decided to profit from my ignorance instead." "It wasn't like that. I used that money to pay off our house, to secure Emma's future. You would have just put it in savings anyway." I laughed, a sound sharp enough to cut glass. "You stole $500,000 from your grieving mother and convinced yourself it was for my own good. The arrogance is breathtaking." Brian leaned across the table desperately. "Mom, please, let me explain everything. Dad left Linda that money because she was pregnant." The world stopped spinning. "What?" "Linda was pregnant with Dad's baby. She lost it in the 4th month, but Dad had already changed his beneficiary to provide for the child. When she miscarried, he was going to change it back, but then he had the heart attack." I stared at him, processing this new layer of betrayal. Frank hadn't just had an affair. He'd gotten his mistress pregnant, and Brian had known all along. "How long have you known?" "Linda called me right after the funeral. She was a mess, grieving for Dad and dealing with the miscarriage. She showed me the medical records, the insurance paperwork, everything. And instead of telling me the truth, you decided to steal from both of us. I convinced her she deserved the full $1 million after what she'd been through. And I used your half to pay off our debts so you wouldn't have to worry about us struggling financially while you grieved. The twisted logic was almost impressive. You stole from me to pay your bills and convinced yourself it was charity. Brian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went even paler. It's Jessica. She says David Morrison is at the house with papers. I smiled. Oh, that'll be the criminal fraud charges. I filed them this morning. Criminal charges? Insurance fraud, elder abuse, theft by deception. David was quite thorough. I signaled the waiter for the check. You see, Brian, when you forge documents and lie to insurance companies about beneficiaries, that's a felony. When you steal money from your elderly mother, that's elder abuse. And when you do it while planning to have her declared incompetent, well, that shows premeditation. Brian's hands were shaking. Mom, please, think about Emma. If I go to jail, you should have thought about Emma before you decided to become a criminal. I stood up, leaving money for my lunch. But don't worry about her. She'll be well provided for. In fact, she'll be getting quite a bit more inheritance than originally planned. What do you mean? I leaned down and whispered in his ear. Linda's giving me back the money that was rightfully mine. All of it. Turns out she's not as comfortable with theft as you are. Brian's face crumpled. You can't do this to me. I'm your son. You're right. You are my son. And that's what makes this so much worse. I walked out of the restaurant and climbed into my car, hands steady on the wheel. One more stop to make. The next morning, I sat in my apartment watching the news coverage of Brian's arrest. Local insurance agent charged with elder abuse and fraud, the anchor reported. Brian Sullivan allegedly stole over $500,000 from his mother's insurance settlement while planning to have her declared mentally incompetent. My phone had been ringing all morning. Reporters, neighbors, old friends who'd seen the story. I ignored them all except one call. Grandma? Emma's voice was small and scared. Mommy's crying and she won't tell me why Daddy isn't coming home. My heart broke for this innocent child caught in the middle of adult ugliness. I'll be right there, sweetheart. I found Emma at her friend's house, where Jessica had dropped her off before heading to the jail to see Brian. The 8-year-old looked lost and confused, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Are you in trouble too, Grandma? I knelt down to her level, taking her small hands in mine. No, baby, I'm not in trouble. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices, and they have to face consequences. Is Daddy a bad person? Your daddy isn't bad, Emma. But he did bad things, and now he has to make them right. Over the next few hours, I explained everything to Emma in age-appropriate terms. How people who love each other should be honest and kind. How taking things that don't belong to you is wrong, even if you think you have good reasons. How sometimes protecting someone means making very hard choices. Are you still mad at Daddy? I considered the question carefully. I'm disappointed in your daddy, and I'm sad that he hurt me, but I will always love him because he gave me you. That evening, Jessica came to collect Emma. She looked haggard, her eyes red from crying. The lawyers say he might get 5 years if he's convicted. That's up to the judge now. Margaret, please. I know we hurt you, but Brian's scared and confused. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him? I looked at this woman who'd participated in planning to steal my independence and dignity, who'd smiled at my face while plotting behind my back. A year ago, I would have crumbled under the guilt she was trying to heap on me. Jessica, I forgave Brian the moment I filed those charges. Forgiveness doesn't mean enabling or ignoring consequences. It means I'm not going to let his choices poison my future. 3 months later, Brian pled guilty to avoid trial. He got 18 months in minimum security prison and 5 years probation. The judge ordered full restitution, $700,000 plus interest and fees. Jessica had to sell the house and move into a small apartment. She got a job at a dental office to support herself and Emma. It wasn't easy, but she was learning to stand on her own feet. Emma came to visit me every weekend. We'd swim in the apartment pool, bake cookies, and work on her homework. She was resilient, the way children are, and she was learning valuable lessons about honesty, consequences, and the difference between love and manipulation. As for me, I enrolled in community college art classes, joined a book club, and started volunteering at the animal shelter. At 67, I was finally living the life I wanted instead of the life others expected of me. Frank's betrayal still stung sometimes, late at night when I was alone with my thoughts. But I'd learned something important. Being hurt doesn't make you weak, and being kind doesn't make you stupid. The day Brian was released from prison, he called me. "Mom, it's me. I know I don't deserve it, but could we try to start over?" I looked out my window at the park where children were playing and couples were walking hand in hand. At the world full of possibilities I'd almost let slip away. "Yes," I said finally, "but this time, we do it on my terms." Some stories end with reconciliation and forgiveness. Others end with justice and new beginnings. Mine ended with both. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.